Hello, I'm Kimberly, and welcome to the weekend edition of the Native News Update. It's Friday, May 4th. Many of the stories you hear here can be found at IndianCountryNews.com. And here's the news for the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. James Anaya, a United Nations Special Rapporteur surveying conditions of Native Americans and Native Alaskans, says he will recommend in his report that some of their lands are returned. Anaya has been meeting with tribal leaders, the administration, and Senate members over 12 days to assess U.S. compliance with the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. He plans several suggestions in his report, likely due out this fall. He says land restoration could help bring about reconciliation. He named the Black Hills of South Dakota as an example. President Barack Obama endorsed the declaration in 2010, which is intended to protect the rights of 370 million Native peoples worldwide. The Yurok Tribe is rolling out new draft legislation next week in its attempt to place more than 1,200 acres of national parkland under the tribe's control. Previous draft legislation, which outlined the transfer of 1,204 acres of Redwood National Park land to the Yurok Tribal Park System, was presented for the public viewing last year. The tribe is presenting a revised draft at the meetings scheduled in Bayside and Klamath. Yurok Tribe Policy Analyst Troy Fletcher said the tribe worked with the Office of Congressman Mike Thompson to make several changes based on the concerns brought up by environmentalists who expressed concern over the precedent the legislation could set, transferring already protected land to a sovereign nation, particularly legislation that doesn't come with a finalized management plan. According to the tribe, the land is part of the tribe's plan to reclaim ancestral territory. The acreage, which contains ceremonial sites, are located within the Yurok Reservation and border the mouth of the Klamath River. Through the same legislation, the tribe is pursuing the transfer of 1,200 acres of U.S. Forest Service land adjacent to the California Highway 101. The legislation also includes Redding Rock, a sea stack off freshwater lagoon that the tribe describes as culturally significant. The Obama administration unveiled long-awaited rules to bolster oversight on public lands of oil and natural gas drilling using fracking. The Interior's proposal would update its decade-old fracking regulations with new reporting standards and a requirement that companies get approval before using the drilling technique. The proposal also would require companies to reveal chemicals they use in hydraulic fracturing after they complete the process. The fracking has unlocked vast new reserves for the United States, but has provoked an intense backlash from some environmental groups and some neighbors of drilling sites. The Interior estimates that its regulations would cost an annual average of about $11,833 per well to implement. The department will collect public input on the rules for 60 days, with plans to finalize the rules by the end of the year. The Minneapolis Mayor R.T. Rybuck has announced Assistant Police Chief Janee Harteau as his nominee to replace Police Chief Tim Dolan, who will retire in January. Harteau joined the police department in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1987 and rose through the ranks, becoming the Assistant Police Chief since 2011. Harteau, who is part Chippewa and French-Canadian, hopes her Native American roots and her status as the first woman to occupy the position will help build trust between the department and the city's racial and ethnic communities. Rybuck will formally nominate Harteau to the City Council in January after Nolan's retirement. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives announced that the Bureau of Indian Affairs Indian Country Law Enforcement Officers Memorial honored RTF's first Native American post-Prohibition era investigator killed in the line of duty. The name of William Louis Pappan, killed 76 years ago on December 4, 1935, was unveiled on the Indian Country's Law Enforcement Officers Memorial during the BIA's annual commemorative ceremony for fallen tribal, state, local, and federal law enforcement officers. In September of 2010, ATF also presented its Gold Star Medal to members of the Pappan family during a BIA National Native American Law Enforcement Association event. And in May of 2011, Pappan's name was engraved on ATF's memorial wall and on the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington. Pappan was the first ATF Kaw Nation federal investigator, the first Native American ATF investigator killed in the line of duty, and one of 3 Native American ATF investigators who served during Prohibition and the post-Prohibition era. Pappan joined the U.S. Department of Treasury, Bureau of the Internal Revenue, Alcohol Tax Unit, and ATF precursor in August of 1935. He was killed 4 months later in Tulsa, Oklahoma. On May 1st, Cherokee Nation Cultural Tourism opened the doors to a completely renovated Cherokee National Prison, the third historic site to be renovated since the group's inception in 2007. It was more than 137 years ago that the Cherokee National Prison opened as the first correctional facility in Indian Territory. The museum site includes the interpretive center, the two-story prison, a restored gallows area outside in the back, along with a blacksmith station. Preservation of cultural heritage sites is a priority for the Cherokee Nation. The 1844 Cherokee Supreme Court building, the oldest government building still standing in Oklahoma, was restored and opened as the Cherokee National Supreme Court Museum. The John Ross Museum highlights the life and leadership of the principal chief and was established in a former rural school. Restoration of the Cherokee National Capitol building, built in 1870, is set to begin in the spring of 2013. And that's another roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. I'd like to thank you for joining me, and have a grand day.